Hey, Rhonda, this is Mitesh. Just calling to see if you can hear me.
Hi, I'm sorry, who is that? Mitesh?
Yeah, this is Mitesh Patel.
Okay, all right. Thank you. You said your name so fast. I'm sorry. Didn't catch it the first
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. And then I'm gonna move it to the other slide. Did you just let someone in? Okay, great, thanks.
This is Erin. Just let me know when we have quorum. I don't think we're there yet, but it is 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think we have 4,
Okay.
so need one more. Thanks. Dave or Gail join. You know, listen to those videos. And if you let on there, correctly. And where else said they were gonna be late? Dave is still on, right? Dave hasn't joined yet. I don't think so. We're waiting on either Shane, Dave, or Gail. Which one? That's fine. Okay. We're waiting. Gail coming in, and then there's somebody with the phone number. 3053. Gail's coming in now. Okay. And then you want me to let the caller in? Yeah, I mean, it has to be someone. Yeah. So Dave's also coming in now. Okay. Then I'll. Did you say 3053? Yeah. Oh, and he's on audio. Right. Hello, Gail. Hello, Dave.
Hi.
So, Erin, we have a quorum now.
Perfect. Thanks, Rhonda. Good morning,
welcome.
everybody. Welcome. We'll just get it going with a call to order and then roll call. Rhonda.
Thank you.
Giuliani with Coconino County will be joining us a little late today. Coconino County Citizen Representative Jillian Thomas.
Yes, present.
Thank you. City of Flagstaff, Shane Dilly.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. City of Flagstaff Citizen Representative Kevin Parks.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Metro Plan, Dave Wessel. Dave, are you with us? I'll come back. NAU Aaron Stum.
Here.
ASNAU Student President Joe Carter.
Here.
Thank you. CCC Kurt Stoll.
I'm here.
Thank you. And our Economic Development Representative from Econa, Gail Jackson.
Here.
Thank you. We have Mitesh Patel, our attorney, on the line. Mitesh?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Great. And we want to say who's in the room? Go around the room? Or? Sure. And let me just first ask if Dave Wessel from Metro Plan is on the line.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you, Dave. Okay, and I'm Rhonda
Yeah.
Cashman, clerk of the board. And we'll go around the room to let you know who's here.
John Mathis, IT Manager.
Kate Morley, Deputy General Manager. Lori Petit, Business Manager.
Sam Short, Safety Manager.
And we also have Heather Higgins, our purchasing and contract officer on the line. Heather, are you there?
I am.
Perfect. Is there anyone else? No? Okay. Okay, I think we're good to go. Erin, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Next up is our safety minute.
Good morning. This month's safety minute is on beating the heat while wearing a mask. Wearing a mask in our hot Arizona weather can seem uncomfortable, even unbearable for some. But it is important to remember that this safety measure is critical in reducing the spread of the virus in our community. Here are a few tips to wear a mask safely and a little more comfortably in hot weather. 1, try a mask made with cotton fabric instead of a heavy material. Researchers have found that materials such as cotton and t-shirts are both breathable and have a high droplet blocking capacity when developed with at least 2 layers. Nylon, polyester, and canvas, while great for particle filtration, rank poorly in breathability. If your mask becomes wet or damp, it's time to switch it out. Wearing a wet or damp mask lessens the ability of the mask to filter out bacteria, meaning it defeats the effectiveness of the mask. Cloth masks that become wet from sweat or exhaled moisture also lessen airflow of oxygen, making it harder to breathe. Always bring an extra mask to swap out in case yours becomes moist. Wash your mask often. Ideally, you should wash your mask after each use. Use regular laundry detergent and the warmest water possible for the material and dry it in a high heat cycle. You can also hand wash your mask in a bleach solution. If you have chronic lung disease or on supplemental oxygen, you should still wear a mask over your equipment, avoid contact with others, and maintain social distances at all times. If you must be around others with a mask, take proper safety precautions for hot weather, such as staying hydrated, wearing loose-fitting clothing, and refraining from high-intensity activities. Welcome to the August TAC meeting.
Thank you very much. We will jump into our business agenda under consent items. The first item up here is consider section 5307, 5339 approval of application and execution of contract. Estella. Oh, I'm sorry, I
Actually,
skipped the
Erin, I'm
minutes.
sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Rhonda. Yes, I did skip, so sorry. Reviewing the June 4th, 2020 minutes. Did anybody have questions or comments?
Move to adopt. This is Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Jillian.
Jillian, second. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are so approved. Thank you. Now we can move on to the agenda items with Estella.
Madam Chair, this is actually Kate. The
Hi,
first
Kate.
two agenda items are on the consent agenda. We're happy to pull them if the board or if the TAC wants to discuss. So let us know. Otherwise, we can move forward to the regular discussion items.
Thank you, Kate. So the second item under consent is considering transit for all mobility on demand. Did anybody have comments or questions on either of these items from the packet that they would like to pose now? Hearing none, we will move on to the discussion items. First discussion item is Kate, considering the AECom change order for Downtown Connection Center.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. So this item is to request a change order to the general consulting services contract, which is held by AECom, and specifically the task order for the Downtown Connection Center. We originally scoped the Downtown Connection Center task order with AECom when we had the $6.7 million grant from ADOT. And since scoping that task order, we received the additional $15 million for the project from FTA. And so that has changed the scope of what we are asking AECom to do, and therefore requires a change order to that contract. A little bit of background about what AECom has done to date on the DCC, because they have started work. They completed initial programming for us about 1.5 years ago, actually. They did a site alternatives analysis. We looked at a variety of properties in the downtown area, filtered them through quite a few criteria about what worked best for Mountain Line, and then ultimately came up with the priority to stay along Phoenix Avenue. They've done title reports on the parcels along Phoenix Avenue, along with appraisals. They're in the process of doing utility mapping already, and have already done a lot of the NEPA background work that has to happen in order to complete NEPA and ultimately. They've done some initial traffic analysis on the property, including the feasibility of adding a stoplight at Phoenix Avenue and Milton, and developed draft concept plans for us. And over the past 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we've been talking about how we want to rescope the contract. And so just a little bit more about what we're going to change. A big part of it is the programming of the project. So originally under the $6.7 million grant, we'd identified some basic needs that we needed on the site, and then some desired items as well. And since we got the additional funding, that list has changed a little bit for us. So we really feel like those desired items are now things that we can definitely do with the funding. And then also are interested in civic space, arts, and admin facilities, which were not originally on the list, that we would need AECom to design. So in addition to the programming, other new items in the scope are enhanced community involvement. Originally, there was a plan to do some surveys and maybe some outreach at the DCC. We've now asked them to actually put together a committee of community members to weigh in on the design of the project. The Beautification and Public Arts Commission is considering adding funding to the DCC for public art. Federal funds are not allowed to be used for art. This is really exciting to be able to add that to the project. But we would need AECom to coordinate with an artist in the design process. So BTAC, the Beautification and Public Arts Commission, likes to bring an artist on from day one to work with the designer of the property to incorporate the art throughout. And so obviously that will take coordination with AECom's architect to do that. We've also put together what we're calling an owners committee. We've always had a mountain lion committee that they needed to work with as a part of the project. But now that we're talking to other partners, such as Parks and Rec about the civic space, potentially other partners about office space, we need them to work with those partners in addition to just mountain lion as stakeholders. So now there's essentially 3 committees: the owners committee of all the people who might occupy the site, the mountain lion committee, and then the community committee. So that's the enhancement of the scope. There's some expanded NEPA work to do related to floodplain and Rio de Flag that was not identified in the original project because we didn't know what property we were going to be on. And then we've also asked them to bring in an FTA joint development expert so we can make sure that we follow all the required guidelines for the partnerships that we want to enter into. And they're also adding in the final design of temporary facilities. So as the Rio de Flag construction happens in 2022, we can't remain on our current site and we won't have a new facility built. But we will need an operator comfort station and new loading zones, and those will all need to be designed, engineered, and permitted through the city. And so AECOM will do final design and get us through permitting of all the temporary facilities that we need to phase in the construction. So those are all additions to the original scope of work that we had. Project delivery they expect us to take about 9 months, concluding in the spring of 2020. The contract is for the 30% design, which really gets us through the NEPA process, FTA, land acquisition processes, and the approval from City Council of the conditional use permit that we will need for the property. After that, we'll begin final design in my comp line should say 2021, I'm just realizing that error. Final design will then kick off in early 2021, probably concluding in early 2022, and then construction would begin 2022, 2023, as soon as we can get in there after the Rio de Flag project. The budget for AECOM to 30% design, this change order would bring the total cost to about $1.1 million. The change order is for about $800,000. I will say we are still negotiating a few things, so it could go plus or minus a little bit from what's in your staff report, but will be refined before it goes to the board. And then we're funding it with the 2 FTA grants that we have received. So it's at an 80-20 split is how we're paying for that. Typically, estimates for how much a final design should cost are 10% of a project. So if this is about a $25 million project, we expect the total cost for final design to be about $2.5 million. And so this is spending just under half of that on the 30% concept design. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or feedback from the TAC on the scope.
Madam Chair, this is Shane. I have a question.
Go ahead, Shane.
Thank you. So Kate, is this kind of a pay as you go? How come we don't have a firm cost from AECOM on the total work that we're asking them to do, start to finish?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Shane. So the only reason I don't have the firm number right now is I've asked them to adjust a couple things. We will have a firm number. It is a contract where they will charge us the actual cost of the cost per hour rate, and if there are savings, then that can come back to Mountain Line. So it's not a fixed fee where that's the price we're going to pay regardless. They will be working to try to save money in the contract throughout the process. Does that answer the question?
Does that answer your question, Shane?
It does. I assume another way of putting that would be, we know what the maximum cost is going to be, or do we not know that? I guess it can go both ways, right? It's hard to know what this is going to end up costing us if we don't get some kind of hard bid. I like the hope that there will be cost savings, and if you do it on a per time basis, then you might be able to realize that. However, how do you know if you're actually getting a cost savings if you don't have a baseline initially? I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, so the 1.1 million total contract value, they would not be allowed to exceed that, and they are expected to deliver everything in the scope for a maximum price of the 1.1 million. They can't go above that, and they do need to deliver everything under that, but we could see cost savings within that if they're items of the scope or things don't take as much time as they originally anticipated.
I guess, but I heard a number in the area of like 2.5 million because it's 10% of the total. So the 1.1 million isn't taking us to the end of the project, is it?
No, the 1.1 takes us to the 30%, which is essentially the NEPA process for FTA that gets us to the point where we can get clearance to do a property acquisition. And it gets us through the CUP process, which we've agreed to take all the way to council, not just the planning and zoning. So all the documents that would be required for the approval of the CUP will be done in this phase. But part of what AECOM is going to do is by December, they're going to recommend to us what procurement type we use for the rest of the project. There are a couple of different things we could do. We could do design, bid, build.
Sure.
We could also bring someone on earlier. So we don't know how we want to finish the design in terms of what methodology, but they are supposed to give us an analysis of the pros and cons of different procurement methods for final design. But yet there, potentially by final design, maybe there is a risk that we go over the 2.5 million total because we haven't procured that yet.
So I guess at some point we'll see another change order request that will take us from the 30% in environmentals to project delivery.
We will do a competitive procurement for final design. The AECOM contract will run out before we have time to do that. So it will need to be a new competitive procurement for final design.
Okay. Maybe I don't want to delay time if nobody else is tracking along these same questions, and I can just sidebar with you, Kate, but I guess I'm just not understanding. I understand this part right here just fine. Total cost 1.1, change order of 800,000. That seems to be pretty straightforward. What I'm not following very well is the rest of the story, I guess, with AECOM. So maybe we can sidebar, I guess.
That sounds great. I'm happy to keep talking it through if others are interested as well.
Madam Chair, Gillian here.
Go ahead, Jillian.
I was under the impression that all federal grants had to have a certain percentage, I think it was 1%, set aside for artwork. Has that changed?
Thank you. Yes, the FAST Act actually changed the rules related to transportation projects and prohibited the use of federal funds for art. I'm happy to tell you that the reauthorization that the House has put out reverses that and goes back to allowing the funds to be used for public art. So the current authorization actually doesn't allow it.
Thank you, Kate.
And then I don't have a question, but Kate, I just want to commend you guys on adding in the community committee with the other construction that has occurred around Flagstaff. There has obviously been some community feelings. And so I appreciate you guys taking that in advance of the actual construction. I think that will be very beneficial. I would ask that folks, so just me trying to make sure that I'm recognizing people, if folks could use the raise hand option in Zoom. I've got my section open so I can keep an eye on who would like to either ask a question or make a comment. So if we could use that, that would be great. So I don't miss anybody. Are there any other questions or comments for Kate? And hearing none, we will move on to the next item, which is consideration of the disadvantaged business enterprise DBE goal for federal fiscal year FY21 to FY23 with Heather.
Good morning. Sorry, I accidentally put to full screen. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the TAC. We have a staff report before you regarding Mountain Line's updated disadvantaged business enterprise goal. As a federally funded entity, Mountain Line is required to maintain a DBE program and set DBE goals as part of our civil rights program. The goal and methodology establishes Mountain Line's estimated goal for FTA-assisted contracts that Mountain Line anticipates awarding in the federal fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2023. The purpose of the DBE goal-setting process is to ensure that non-discrimination in the award of U.S. Department of Transportation-assisted contracts, to create a level playing field on which DBEs can compete fairly for those contracts, and to ensure the DBE program is narrowly tailored in accordance with applicable laws. We took the following steps in order to evaluate our past DBE goal and to reach our new proposed goal for federal fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Based on Mountain Line's 10-year plan and anticipated Department of Transportation assisted projects, we determine the weight of those projects by the North American Industry Classification System, that's NAICS codes. And this gives us a value of project percentage of total DOT awards. Sorry, that was the next slide, Lori. There we go. That's the one that I just referenced. Next slide, please. Next, we determined the number of vendors available for these projects by the NAICS code, calculating both the total number of vendors as well as the total number of DBE vendors, which gives us the percentage of DBE vendors within the available groups. Next slide. Then we calculated the weight from step 1 multiplied by the percentage of available vendors, giving us the rounded weighted base figure of 6%. Next slide. Then we calculated our DBE participation over the previous triennial period, which was 4.8. We used that figure to weigh the weighted base figure, arriving at the updated proposed DBE goal of 3% for federal fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Next slide. A public comment period is being held. It ends August 15th. To date, there have been no comments from the public. The proposed triennial goal was submitted to FTA for review on August 21 and is pending FTA comments. We are recommending that the Mountain Line Board of Directors adopt this proposed DBE goal of 3% for federal fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Heather? I am not hearing or seeing any. So thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Next, FY20 annual cybersecurity report, John.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the TAC. This is John Mathis, IT Manager for Mountain Line. I'm here this morning to share a brief report on the state of Mountain Line cybersecurity. And as a side note, since this is an inaugural cybersecurity report, just would appreciate any feedback you have either on the content or the format of the presentation. So first, I want to start with a few of the cybersecurity related initiatives that we've completed in the last couple of last fiscal year. Those include multi-factor authentication for email. That's when you get an extra code or some other thing besides your password to let you get into your email. That's important because, just as an example, Microsoft reported that out of all the email compromises they've seen, only about 0.1% of those
were accounts protected by multi-factor authentication. So it's definitely an effective way to keep the bad guys out. We also rolled out password managers for staff. So that's a software program to keep track of your passwords, so to encourage people not to reuse passwords. And we implemented domain name system filtering. Sorry, I know IT has a lot of acronyms. It's almost as bad as transit. So we throw some alphabet soup at you. So domain name system filtering is just a way to make sure that whatever web browsing happens isn't going to malicious domains. And then highlighting some of our primary risks, there are a multitude of risks in the cyber world, just highlighting two of the major ones that Mountain Lion and every other organization faces. So the first is a technical risk, the second is personnel related, but they're both very closely related. So ransomware is the first one, and that's when criminals hold your data hostage in hopes that you'll pay a ransom to get your data back. And recently, criminals have added a fun extortion twist. So not only do they hold your data hostage, but they also threaten to release your data publicly. So things that Mountain Lion does to mitigate ransomware includes endpoint protection software, what traditionally has been called antivirus software, storing backups offline to make sure that the ransomware can't get to them, keeping software up to date, and cyber insurance policy. The second risk is phishing, and that's when criminals send some sort of electronic communication, typically email, and they try to make it look like it's from a legitimate source with the goal of getting you to click on a link and either install virus or bad software, malware on your computer, or to get information like your password or your credit card number. So phishing is the most common way for criminals to initiate a ransomware attack, so that's the connection between the two risks. So we mitigate phishing by requiring all staff to attend cybersecurity training when they start. And then we do a bi-monthly refresher training, a short 10-minute training. And we also conduct monthly phishing tests that basically we're testing the effectiveness of our training program, so we know what to train on, what to continue training on with our refresher training courses. So the method we use to track our progress is the nationwide cybersecurity review. It's a self-administered survey for public organizations, and it's hosted by the Department of Homeland Security and the CenterNet for Internet Security. Maturity level is measured on a scale of 1 to 7, and just to be clear, that's the maturity level of our cybersecurity program. It's not the maturity level of staff. So the NCSR allows Mountain Lion to benchmark and track our progress. So on this year-to-year graph, you can see if you look closely, we have made progress, but it's been incremental, and we haven't to date been able to move the needle significantly. And then the NCSR also allows us to compare against our peers. So again, other public organizations. The first group in the graph is organizations who are identified as an authority of some kind, so not necessarily a transit authority or just transit authorities. The second group are those who identify as local governments in general. The third is mass transit. And just to note that this is the first year there have been enough mass transit participants to anonymously compare against peers. And the fourth group is mountain line. So you can see we have some work to do. All of our averages across the 5 groups are low, and there are details in the attachment in the report. I can say that a lot of the low scores are due to processes that we complete informally, but we don't have documented in procedures and policies. And then looking at the future, based on the results of the feedback from the NCSR, these are the areas we're going to focus on for FY 2021. So response and recovery, planning and testing, improving our audit log monitoring and review, monitoring for unauthorized personnel, connections, devices, and software, collecting and correlating event data, and then developing policies related specifically to communication of event detection, roles and responsibilities, restriction of removable media, and coordination with stakeholders. Now I can answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, John. Does anyone have any questions for John? Hearing none, we will continue to move forward. Thanks, John. Next up is considering the Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization request for service. Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mountain Line recently received a request from Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization, SIMPO, to help them access some federal funding that they currently don't have access to. Several years ago, the board adopted a policy for considering requests, and so today I'm going to walk you through what the request was and then how it fits with the policy that the board adopted. So first of all, the request is for them to help access CARES funding. As you may recall, that funding that was dedicated to transit in the coronavirus, the first coronavirus response, I guess, from the federal government. They allocated funding to each region based on a population formula. And per that population formula, SIMPO was allocated $3.5 million. However, in order to draw down any of the funds, you have to be a Section 5307 recipient. And Mountain Line is a Section 5307 recipient. That's the type of transit service that we run. But since SIMPO doesn't run any service currently, they don't have that status from FTA, and so needed assistance to be able to access the funds. They're asking for us to help them draw down about $400,000 of the $3.5 million that was allocated to the region so that they can do transit planning. They have been doing transit planning for the past year and a half. Mountain Line actually helped them draw down funds for that as well through a similar request. This $400,000 would be for them to take the planning that they have done through technical implementation, so getting them through receiving their own Section 5307 status from FTA so that in the future they could draw down their own funds. Mountain Line would receive 10% of the $400,000 for administering the funds, and CARES Act is 100% funding, so there's no local match requirement from SIMPO or Mountain Line to be able to access this money. So the policy for which we consider such requests to help is really up on the slide. There's 2 areas. One is minimum requirements and one is other considerations. The first minimum requirement is that the direct costs are paid for by the requesting agency. So that is true under this scenario. The $365,000 of the $400,000 would be for the planning effort, and it would not impact Mountain Line's own funding sources. That would be through the CARES Act that was allocated to the SIMPO region. The indirect costs are also paid by the requesting agency as a factor, and that's true. That's that 10% that Mountain Line would receive to administer the funds that they're proposing to pay us to do that. We also need the service request to be consistent with our mission, vision, and guiding principles. And I have listed a couple up on the slide and in your staff report that we believe that this request is consistent with. Really just thinking about NASA being about Northern Arizona communities and the Simcoe region, which is, if I haven't said, is Prescott Valley, being a part of that. And the final minimum requirement is that we can continue to do all the things we've already committed to do for the partners through the strategic work plan. And we do believe that we can do that. The heavy workload with drawing this down will, I think, impact the admin team. There'll be some purchasing that we have to do, oversight and budget. But believe that the workload can be accommodated without impacting our ability to do other projects. The second set of requirements are just additional considerations for the board. The first one is, does the requesting agency have a long-term funding commitment? Simcoe does not have a long-term funding commitment in terms of having local match for typical 5307 money that requires that, but since the CARES money doesn't require it, and they're just doing planning, we're not in a situation where we're looking at starting a service for a year or two and then not having the funds to continue it. So we feel like it's pretty low risk, even though there is no long-term funding identified by Simcoe. And that's the second question. If there is not, are we creating a service dependency? And we're only planning, so we're not creating a service dependency. And then, are there indirect benefits to other NASA members? And we do believe that there is a benefit in having regional transit services, and the more transit around the state, the better off, all the connections could possibly be and access to get different places. And this plan that they're going to use the money for is really that implementation so they can really get up and running. Beyond having a plan of where routes are going, it's about how do they get the organizational structures in place, who's paying what's in the IGA, getting through the FTA process to become a 5307. So it's really going to help move them forward to implement their own services. As a reminder, we could help with a similar request for what they call the TRIP, the Transit Implementation Plan that they're currently doing. And this would be to take that another step further. There's actually no action at this time. The Simcoe board still needs to, the City Council of Prescott and Prescott Valley still need to take action on the request. They're not able to consider that until September. So assuming that they do want to move forward with this opportunity, we would be back to the board in October to actually approve something. We wanted to set the stage and get any feedback at this point in time to relay that on to Simcoe as they're working with their partners on the request. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Questions for Kate? And again, I don't have a question, but Kate, I think it sounds like this would be great to kind of get them up and running on their own so they won't actually need to leverage your status to help them as they have other projects. So it might be just the right thing that's, if I'm understanding it correctly, just the right thing that you can help them get up and running so they would be able to take care of themselves. Any other? Oh, exactly. I do see two hands. So sorry, let's go Gail and then Shane.
Hi, Kate. I wanted to express my support for this. I think it's fabulous. We know that the labor force travels approximately 50 miles so to get to work. And I think this is a really great thing. And I wanted to inquire though, whatever happened with the Winslow? I think you guys were helping Winslow and maybe even providing service there. So I kind of wanted to see, as you were expanding and looking regionally, what happened to that particular route?
That's a great question and a little bit of a sore spot. We were very excited to help Winslow get their intercity transit service up and running. And then last fall, I want to say, though I might have to confirm the date, we had moved along actually quite a long way. Last fall, they decided not to do the intercity service and to just do local service instead. So they actually withdrew their request. Though we were prepared to help them with that. And good news, they do have local service up and running now. They were able to make that happen pretty quickly, and we've heard it's been pretty successful. So we're excited for them out there and hope that one day we can make that connection between the cities.
Gotcha. Thank you. And again, we know that there's a lot of people traveling north from the Cottonwood, Yavapai area. So I think that this would be a very good thing. So thank you.
Shane.
Thanks, and thanks, Kate. Appreciate the report. Kudos on the creativity in terms of accessing, this money on behalf of SIMPO and to be a good partner that way. I trust that this is kind of common practice in terms of, there's a set requirement that they don't qualify, but we're jumping into because we do to help them out. I mean, it's all in the up and up. That's assumption on my end, but I'm curious. It makes reference in your report that our interest is to help them achieve their Section 5307. Is that correct? And if so, where are they at in that process?
Yeah, so we did confirm, because the CARES funding is kind of unique in that it was meant to support transit agencies responding to coronavirus. We did specifically call both ADA and FTA to have a conversation to see if they were supportive of us helping, and if it met the intent of the CARES Act funds, and both said, yes, it's legal, and if that's what the local jurisdictions want to do, we support it. So just to clarify on that, it is definitely legal under the normal Section 5307, but we also went the extra step on the CARES to confirm that. And then, so yes, I think our interest is just in being a good transit partner and making transit even more forefront across the state. So them getting their 5307 recipient status is how they would be able to do that. That is the population demographic that they fall into. It does require approval by FTA. So they can't really be running any federally funded transit service without that status. They do have like a small kind of Chino Valley route that is a 5311 or a rural transit system. But to access the formula funds for population geography that they would normally be entitled to, they would need that 5307 status. Does that answer the question?
It does. So it's a population criteria, and they don't meet that right now, which is why they can't get that clearance from the FTA. And so we're stepping in to kind of help them out and allow them to get access to this money through the CARES Act. Is that correct?
That's real close. I'll clarify a little bit that population-wise, they actually get awarded money every year already because it's simply a census-based distribution of the funds. However, because they've never gone through the process with FTA to become a Section 5307 recipient, because they've never had the local match required to draw down any of the funds. They've never done that process. So they get allocated money every year, and actually through that process, there are several communities in the state that don't run transit systems. The money all gets sent to the state instead, and then that is actually the funding that we often compete for under 5307, 5339 competitive grants that you actually have a staff report in the progress, or it was in the consent section. That's actually the money from SIMPO and these other communities that get swept by the state every year because they don't have transit systems.
Thank you, Kate.
They do get awarded money. Yeah, okay. Great.
No, I get it. That they could qualify. They just don't go through that process because of the local match requirement, and they don't have that. So that all makes sense. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Jillian.
You're welcome.
Yes, I just want to, if Kate would clarify for me the geographic area. And are we talking about just intra-transit or inter-transit? In other words, connections to Phoenix and south and east and west and up here to Flag?
Yeah, the geographic area is really the area, it's like a broad area surrounding both Prescott and Prescott Valley. So it's like kind of like that FMP or Metro plan is the greater, like that region is kind of that greater Prescott Valley region. And then their plan right now is focusing on service within the cities, but they're also looking at things like the van pool program to be intra-city. So I don't think that they've looked, as far as I know, I don't think that they've looked at service to Phoenix specifically. I know we have talked about services to Cottonwood and up here from there. That starts to get into a partnership with NACOG, Northern Arizona Council of Governments as well. So I think they want to be intra-city. I think their focus is to get something local going and then expand and figure out how to connect with other systems.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands raised, we can move on. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
Progress.
Erin?
Yes.
Erin, this is Rhonda, and I just want to recognize that Lucinda has joined us now from Coconino County.
Hi, Lucinda. Okay.
Hi there, thank you.
So progress report, 2020 strategic plan update, Heather.
So Erin, similar to consent agenda, we tend to do progress reports.
If anybody has questions on any of them. Right, is that correct?
Yeah, if anyone wants us to pull and discuss, we're happy and prepared to do so.
There's a pretty long list today. I will read down through it. I know folks probably have their agenda, but just so folks know, if there's anybody, and again, I will try to look for hands raised if somebody says, oh, I'd like, if there's one you'd like to do. So the 2020 strategic plan update, so these are items, for those that maybe are newer, these are items that are already in your packet, and the expectation is that you read through them, and if there's something you would like to ask or understand more about, that we would do that here, but that we wouldn't go through each one. So there's the 2020 strategic plan update, the FY 2021 October advance, FY 2021 liability insurance renewal, annual safety report, public transportation agency safety plan, emergency management update, the COVID-19 reopening plan, the FY 2020 annual fleet maintenance report, delegations of authority, and summary of current events. Are there any of those items that folks would like to have questions about or would like to understand more information about? I'm just giving folks a few minutes to kind of peruse through the packet if they hadn't had a chance to do that. I'm not seeing any hands. I think all those items are pretty well clear in the packet. So if there are no other items, the next thing is just confirmation of our next meeting, which would be September 3rd. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns before we adjourn?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Mitesh, the legal counsel.
Hi, Mitesh. Hi.
Hi, just wanted to let everyone know that during next month's meeting, we will be hosting some training on the revised rules of procedure and code of conduct. And that following this meeting, I will be sending out an email to everyone just in case anyone has any specific questions or topics that they would like covered. We can definitely incorporate that into next month's presentation.
Great, that'll be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm hesitating because I feel weird. I don't know that I've ever in my many years ever seen us complete a meeting in less than an hour.
Erin, don't feel bad at all.
Okay. Well, we're in the midst of move-in here, so trust me, I know that there's other things that could take. Oh, I do see you have it. Kevin, you have a question or a comment?
Well, I'll try not to prolong the meeting too much, but I've been sitting here thinking about something going back to John's presentation on the system scores compared to other agencies and across the nation, where you mentioned that some of those scores could come up with the documentation of the systems in place at the mountain line. I spent several years early in my career documenting hardware and software processes, and I know it's a great chore to do. Just wondering if we have the capacity within Mountain Line to actually get that work done to improve our scores.
This is John. I think we do have the capacity until our focus to date has been kind of keeping the lights on and making sure systems work. We've been understaffed. We did add a half-time position this year, so that's going to help us kind of catch up, and I think that will enable me to get to the documentation and policies and procedures.
Yeah. All right, that's what it's about.
Okay, thanks, John. Well, if there are no other items, then meeting adjourned, right? I don't need a vote on that one. Pretty sure I'm trying to follow my rules of order. All right, meeting adjourned. Have a great week, folks.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Rhonda,
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.